Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel's new ambassador to Turkey receives a warm welcome in Ankara. It looks like Israel's young men may get to serve less time in the military, and there's trouble in paradise for the family of an NBA All-Star playing in the Holy Land. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, here with the latest news in Israel. The Israeli Knesset is advancing the controversial settlement bill, which was given preliminary approval during a particularly stormy session. This latest development comes after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was able to clinch a compromise deal with the bill's sponsors. The key sticking point was a clause granting retroactive approval of the Amona outpost, which is set to be demolished on December 25th on court orders. But after that section was dropped, according to the agreement, the bill was passed by a vote of 60 to 49. The revised motion aims to legalize other Israeli settlement homes that the owners say they didn't realize were built on private Palestinian land in the West Bank. The crisis still isn't over, though. Israel's Attorney General thinks that even the newest version won't make it past the High Court. Not only that, but opposition to the bill among left-wing groups remains strong.
The law is meant to legalize illegal settlement construction in private Palestinian lands and could potentially lead to the expropriation of 8,000 dunams and legalize 55 illegal outposts. The Israeli Attorney General referred to this law as illegal, and even Netanyahu understands that this might lead to investigations at The Hague. More importantly, the legalization of 4,000 housing units on private Palestinian lands and the expansion of settlements as a result could lead to a devastating consequence on the two-state solution.
The proposed legislation is also already drawing sharp international condemnation. But it's important to remember that the measure can't become law unless it's passed 3 more votes at unspecified dates in the future. And it may undergo further changes by that time. Meanwhile, the residents of Amona insist they have a right to remain in their homes and vow it won't be easy to force them out in a few weeks' time.
We are not here, we're not occupying here anything. We came back to our forefathers' land, our ancient land. We're a very ancient people. And this is our home. We tried to be in Europe, we've been all over the place, and we got kicked out and raped and massacred everywhere. And this is our land. We have nowhere else to go. This is the cradle of the Hebrew civilization. If we come to the 25th of December and we'll have to evacuate, we will not evacuate this place. We will bring here more than 20,000 people who will sit with us in this hill, and the police will have to take us out of here by force. We are not going to walk out of here. This is our homeland. This is where we belong.
Israel's new ambassador to Turkey is ready to get to work now that he's officially been received in Ankara. Aaron, this is a huge deal. We've been reporting on it for the past year, just waiting for the two countries to finally reconcile, and now it's happening.
Yeah, it really has come as a shock to pretty much everyone. You know, even up until now, as our ambassador is in Turkey, it could go either way, but hopefully we all have our hopes up. The Turkish ambassador by the end of the week will be here in Israel. And yeah, I mean, our hopes are up.
Absolutely. I mean, what do you think this means for the future of Israeli-Turkish relations, having this exchange?
Well, let's find out.
Israel's national anthem was being performed by the Turkish military band at the presidential palace in Ankara, as Jerusalem envoy Eitan Naeh presented his credentials to Turkish leader Erdogan. This was almost unimaginable over the past 6 years, when diplomatic ties between the once close allies were completely frozen. Relations ruptured after the 2010 Mavi Marmara incident, when 10 Turkish activists were killed after they attacked Israeli soldiers trying to prevent them from breaching the naval blockade around Gaza. But finally, this past June, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Erdogan signed a deal agreeing to reconcile. Both countries share rising mutual concerns over Islamist extremism in the region, as well as lucrative prospects of bilateral economic deals to develop natural gas reserves in the Mediterranean Sea. Turkey's ambassador is expected to take up his new post in Israel later this week.
Is the anti-Israel boycott movement losing strength? BDS expert Dan Diker certainly seems to think so, and he sat down with ILTV's Steve Leibowitz to explain why.
BDS is losing. Israel is winning the war on BDS. And I would say the champions of freedom are winning the war against BDS in Israel and across the Atlantic, in Europe and in the United States. Since the Israeli political echelons and the Israeli public in May of 2015 coalesced following the terrible incident with the Orange phone company and its French president, Mr. Richard, who said he would want to drop Israel as a client tomorrow when he was in Cairo, that generated an earthquake in Israel. And since then, the Israeli public and the entire parliamentary system has come together to adopt a no-tolerance policy for BDS, which they look at as a type of political warfare to destroy the state of Israel from the outside and from the inside.
So the fact that Israel is so united, the left and the right are so united on this issue of anti-BDS, that is the reason that it's being pushed back around the world?
That's Israel's being united to vomit out, to reject BDS, has echoed across the waters and has sent a very strong, united message that it is intolerable to boycott Israel, because it's boycotting Israel as a state, not boycotting one territory or another territory. France has come out with legislation to outlaw BDS. The United Kingdom has come out with legislation banning BDS. The United States, at least 14 states, have now made BDS illegal in those states. Governor Cuomo of New York most recently said, if you boycott Israel, New York will boycott you. It is this echo effect that stems from the Israeli united position rejecting BDS as a full-fledged assault against Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people that has coalesced other countries against this hateful form of warfare.
Do you equate BDS to the labeling of products from settlements? Is that another form of BDS, or is there really a differentiation?
The European Union and Mrs. Mogherini, at the head of the European Union foreign policy establishment, has tried time and time and again to separate out the labeling of products from BDS, and in fact has publicly opposed BDS. However, the problem is that Israel is the only country in over 200 international territorial conflicts that the European Union has chosen to take action on in terms of requiring the labeling of products that are sourced in the post-1967 territories, in what Israelis call Judea and Samaria, in what much of the rest of the world called the former West Bank of Jordan. Israel finds that to be highly discriminatory, and if the European Union wants to label products, let them label it in all of the 200 territorial conflicts there are around the world, not just the conflict between the Palestinian Authority and leadership and the State of Israel.
Are you optimistic as we head towards a new administration in Washington that BDS will take yet another blow because of strong opposition to BDS from some of the key administration officials like Nikki Haley?
Well, former Governor Haley of South Carolina, who today is the nominee to be the United States of America's ambassador to the United Nations, was the first governor to pass anti-BDS legislation. And I think it's reasonable to say that most cabinet, if not all cabinet appointees in the incoming cabinet of President-elect Trump will forcefully reject BDS as a form of warfare. And I think that they see that what normally starts with Israel ends up extending to the rest of the West, and therefore we might see those types of forms of subversion, which we already have seen, by the way, against the West by the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States and some of their radical fellow travelers. So Israel has been called the canary in the coal mine, and BDS is another good example of it. I think that the incoming Trump administration has a very strong sense of that.
Dan Diker of Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, thanks for being with us at ILTV.
There's great news for the boys of the Israeli high school class of 2020 because it looks like they're going to be serving less time in the army than their predecessors ever have. The Knesset's Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee has just approved a bill cutting compulsory military service for men down from 32 to 30 months. Only 2 more positive votes by the plenum are necessary before the measure legally goes into effect in about 3 years' time. The draft was already cut down from a full 3-year requirement in July of 2015. It's all part of the IDF's campaign to streamline operations, and even though it means a drop in manpower, defense officials say security of the Jewish nation remains as powerful as ever. That's because more than 2/3 of the Army's total fighting force is made up by reservists. And as one general says, wars are decided by the nation's outstanding reserves and not by the standing army of conscripts. The Israeli economy is expected to be positively impacted by the new lengths and tours of duty because young men will be entering the workplace earlier. And even though patriotism is very high in Israel, with the vast majority of both young men and women willing to dedicate their lives in defense of the Jewish nation, who wouldn't like a little time off for good behavior? In 2014, 3 young Israeli teens were waiting at a bus stop on their way home in the West Bank when they were kidnapped and later murdered by the Hamas terror organization, which operates out of the Gaza Strip. The tragic murder of the boys eventually led to the 2014 war in Gaza known as Operation Protective Edge by the Israeli military. The war may have ended, but Rachel Frenkel, the mother of one of the murdered boys, Naftali Frenkel, is taking the fight one step further, this time from a legal standpoint. Joining me today to discuss the lawsuit is Israeli attorney Sharon Nahari. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
So, to begin, can you tell us about the context of this lawsuit? Who are the plaintiffs? Who are the defendants, and what is at stake here?
Usually the court, when you have a lawsuit in court, the defendant is the people that the claim is upon them. For example, in this kind of case of Mrs. Frenkel, the defendant are the Iranian and the Syrian governments, which she claimed that is responsible for the kidnapping of the kids that has been murdered. So the defendant is the countries Iran and Syria, and the plaintiff is the one who wants to sue. In this case, is the mother, and she has the right to sue because she is a U.S. citizen, and this give her the right to sue in the U.S. court, actually. Otherwise, she couldn't.
Right. Now, Rachel is suing in efforts to try and cut off funding towards Hamas, which is responsible for what happened to her son, and she can identify how the money travels to a certain extent. Now, can't these funds be frozen before they get to Hamas?
This is a big question. Following the protective principle approach laid down by the Court of Appeal lately in the U.S. Court of Appeal, the federal judges in a few cases give several decisions which are precedents today that actually they can forfeiture and take assets of Iran or Syria if they find that they have contact to terror or support terror. So actually these are the cases. The problem is that after the decisions of the court, Iran trying to play games and not paying to the victims. Even though the decision of the courts are that they need to pay millions and hundreds of millions of dollars to the victims. It's not the only case. There were cases before, and the judge accepted the lawsuit against Iran. And the problem is how to collect the money from Iran. This is a big problem because they're trying to hide behind a charity institute and other companies, offshore companies, and the buildings and the assets. By the way, they don't send a lawyer to the lawsuit. They just, most of the time, the judges decide without the lawyer, but they send the lawyer after the decisions to protect the assets, to claim different claims that it's not belong to them and you cannot take it. This is a big problem. So to your question, if they can stop the fund before, it's a big problem because although Obama started doing things we know before a few years, and it's a problem because you need to have the contact and it needs to be, proof and evidence
Right.
that first of all, it belongs straightly to the government of Iran, and secondly, which is not easy, that they have direct or indirect connection to support the terror. For example, in this kind of case of Rachel, for example, she claimed that she has evidence, intelligence evidence, and people from the intelligence in Israel that will come to be witness in the trial, that they know and they have a proof, a specific proof that Iran and Syria gave money and support the family of the murderers, which is very, very interesting. And if the court will accept this testimony, the witnesses, and those evidence which will be exhibited in the case, and the court can claim and to decide against Iran and Syria, and again to decide that they can pay hundreds of millions of dollars for the victims.
But again, that money actually has to...
It's a circle. It's
right,
a circle.
exactly. So.
But now they start to... There are some cases now in the United States that they start collecting the assets, and which is very good. Iran need to know that she cannot hide anymore behind charities, institutions, and offshore companies. And if she will put her legs in terror, indirect or directly, she will pay the price.
Absolutely. Now, are there any other ways to cut Hamas off from this type of financial support, other than legally, I guess?
I think there are some civil action that can be taken regarding money laundering acts. For example, if there will be evidence that Iran buy or bought assets or funds or money in the banks, that the roots of the money, the basic of the money, is belong to terror or need to support terror, I think that they can do it to freeze it before something will happen.
Interesting. So my next question is two-part. If the lawsuit fails, doesn't that leave Rachel and the other plaintiffs at risk of being countersued? And two, if the lawsuit is successful, how can Iran be forced to pay her? That we just spoke about this issue, obviously.
Yes. So the first point that you say, the first question is if she can be a countersue. The answer is no, because it's not a game. I mean, if someone sues someone in court and if he loses, he cannot sue him because he sued him. It's not a game, and it's not working like that. Regarding the other question, I already answered if they can catch the assets, which is already going to do now. In 2015, there are two presidents in the United States that allow the victim to catch and execute the assets of Iran. One of it, it's a bank, it's a building, money on the bank, everything. They can start doing it and to divide it to the victims. So which is a sign. It's a symbolical sign that need to stop the terror.
Right.
Iran cannot play games anymore, and even though Syria, they cannot support terror and to be in the United Nations when Obama speaking and playing like they like to be peace all over the world. It's not going both ways.
Now, my final question for you is, do you think that, Rachel's going to win this lawsuit? What are the chances?
If, according to what I read, if she really has this evidence and the witnesses, I think she has a very good chance. And also, regarding the two presidents that have now in 2015, she can have a good chance after to collect the money. As I understand, Rachel have a big sorrow and she's not interested in the money, but although there is a charity in Israel that represent them, Rachel and the others, that maybe collect the money, or I don't know, but now she can collect the money. It's a procedure It's another procedure, heart procedure, and at the end of the day, she can get the money.
Well, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what happens, and obviously hope for the best.
Yeah.
Hope that she can kind of overcome this terrible tragedy that's happened to her
tragedy,
family.
big tragedy, yeah.
Big tragedy. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
All parents have nightmares over any harm coming to their children, but now specific concerns about pedophilia are rising in Israel. That's because there's currently an oversight in the law that allows all Jews to immigrate to the country. One local children's rights group is claiming that 34 alleged pedophiles have taken advantage of this dark loophole over the past decade and are trying to turn Israel into a safe haven for sex criminals. Even though that number is relatively low, activists and worried parents are fighting back. They're raising awareness of the issue on social media, forming community groups, and even writing books for parents to read to their children. The best way to keep your child from being victimized, they say, is to teach body safety tips, so kids know when it's not okay if their personal space is being violated. Experts say these kinds of conversations shouldn't be frightening, but can be empowering for children even as young as 3. It's also critical to open all the channels of communication so your children know they can always come to you with any problem. It turns out there's trouble on the Israeli basketball court, but no, it's not inter-team rivalry, complaints about the referees, or even rowdy fans. It's because the 12-year-old son of retired NBA All-Star Amari Stoudemire has been benched. Aaron, I thought Amari was going to be welcomed in Israel with open arms. I mean, I myself was so excited to have him come and play here. He's one of my favorite basketball players.
You are not the only one here in Israel. Back in the States, everybody was very, very, very excited to receive him. But the reality is that he's a new immigrant in this country, and whether or not he, likes it, so is his family, and they're going through the ringer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having immigrated to this country myself, I know how difficult it can be. So what happened to his son?
Well, let's take a look at my report.
Deuce Stoudemire is not allowed to officially participate in Israel's youth basketball league because he's not a citizen, and his mother Alexis isn't happy about it. She's been busy posting complaints about the situation on Instagram. Even though her husband plays pro basketball in Israel's Premier League for the Hapoel Jerusalem team, Deuce is being forced to sit out games for the same club's youth division. This sad situation can still have a happy outcome, however. Deuce is allowed to participate on the school's basketball team. And what's more, a spokesman for the Israeli Basketball Association says that even though Israel's policies are consistent with other countries' leagues, a formal request from his father's teams for an exception in Deuce's case would be viewed positively. The young, aspiring athlete lives with his parents and 3 siblings in Jerusalem. The American family came to the Jewish state after a surprise announcement this past August that his 6-time All-Star father was leaving the NBA after 14 seasons. Jerusalemites are thrilled that Amari, who claims to have Hebrew roots, came to play for the capital's home team. Masa Israel is home to the widest variety of immersive international experiences for Jewish young adults 18 to 30. Find the right study abroad internship, service learning, or Jewish studies program to help you grow as a person, a professional, and a leader, while also developing a robust global professional network that includes Israelis and Jews from around the world.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. We've all experienced it before, and most of us hate it, but pain is a necessary part of our lives. So today's word is ko'ev, or painful. Ke'ev, or the noun for pain, can be physical, mental, or emotional, just like in English. So you could say both ko'ev li harosh, or my head hurts, just as you might say ko'ev li alev, or my heart hurts. Of course, ko'ev li alev could be both physical as well as emotional, but I'm sure whomever you're speaking with will get the context. Now, pain might feel terrible, but unfortunately, it's something we need and typically don't appreciate. Ke'evim warn us of damage to the body, as well as serve as a reminder of the things that give us joy. Think of it this way: you can't have heartache without first having love. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight will be fairly clear to partly cloudy with a low of 51 or 11 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect a nice sunny day and a little change in the temperature with a high of 68 or 20 degrees Celsius. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.81 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you tonight.